Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Court. I'm Armand Batra, and today I have two very, very, very special guests with me, Tristan Richardson and Mr. Chris Richardson, who are really, truly dear friends of mine. Tristan, as you know, he played on the varsity team with me, and Mr. Chris Richardson, who is also a former Division One player. So, Mr. Richardson, the first question is for you. Where did you grow up, and how specifically did basketball enter your life?
Yeah, so I grew up in Columbia, Casey, South Carolina. So a very small town. Grew up in a basketball family. My father played basketball, played for Benedict College, had a brief run with the pros before messing up his knee, injuring his knee, which I suffered from the same issues. But literally, basketball has just been a part of my life. I wasn't very good at basketball as a kid. You know, my brother was the talent. Like, he was the one that was the shining star, and everyone kind of bet on him. And he would go on to play for Brevard College in North Carolina. So I was a late bloomer, right? So basketball was just something I did because, you know, my dad forced us to. And
Yeah.
at a young age, he just had us playing against grown men. Even when we were 7, 8, we'd go to different parts of South Carolina, different parts that were very rough neighborhoods. And it was just trial by fire, right? But I was the nerdy, quiet one. My brother was more the superstar, and I didn't have my glow up until a little bit later on. But yeah, we'll get more into that.
Okay, perfect. So, what school specifically did you play for when you went, like, in high school, and also in when you went to Division One?
Yeah. So went to Burton Casey High School. Wasn't recruited at all. Like I said, I was just under the radar. My goal was to walk on at University of South Carolina, right? So that's what I did, which was a tougher route, right? Because you don't really, when you're recruited, it's an easier path, right? You got scholarships and things of that nature, right? Which I had academic scholarships, but basketball just wasn't something that I thought I would do after high school. It was more so a point to where I'm like, okay, look, my brother's a superstar, right? But I've got something I can do here, right? And so my path was just completely self forged. I didn't have trainers or coaches or anything like that. My dad pushed us hard, right? So I had that good foundation. But my goal was just to be able to compete with my brother, right? And so I went on this mission. And I remember being really, really skinny growing up in school. So in high school, I was just tiny, right? And I wore these big, thick glasses. My head was always this size, but I was small, man. And so I went on a diet. I remember, I remember my dad taking me to a nutritionist. And, you know, because I was really small, and he was just like, well, this can't be normal. So they put me on soy protein. They put me on all these different supplements. And the doctor, I'll never forget, I was heartbroken. He was just like, look, man, these are how the cards is dealt. He's like, you'll probably be a buck 40, soaking wet. That's probably the biggest you'll ever be. There's nothing much you can do, right? And so I didn't accept that. So at this point, it wasn't about basketball for me. It was just about getting bigger, stronger, and faster. And so I wore a stopwatch around my neck for about 3 years and went on a diet to where I ate chicken breast, rice, tuna, bagels, probably about almost 6,000 calories a day. And I was religious
Wow.
about it. I would leave the house and just have this backpack on. And I think I changed my frame, right? I think at my heaviest, I got up to maybe 225, 230, which was a lot for someone like me. Now, my knees suffered from it, right? But if you look at the pictures of me and I did the spelling bee and all that stuff growing up, very different looking child. I looked very malnourished, really, really skinny, very wiry frame. And so I'm a firm believer in changing the paradigm. When people tell you that, hey, you'll hit a wall, don't let people tell you what you can and what you can't be. Now, I didn't play that long, right? Because when you're a walk-on, right, I was an engineering major. I had to make a tough decision that, okay, basketball is just not for me, right? Because I can either spend the next 3 years trying to get in rotation, or I can devote myself to my studies, right? So I had some injuries. Redshirting was not as a popular option back then, so I decided to kind of choose the engineering route. But for me, it was more so about making it and proving myself wrong, proving others wrong, to where I could transform myself, right? So big believer in diet, discipline, and really forging yourself and making yourself the kind of player you want to be.
Okay, perfect. So, clearly you talked a lot about your mindset from
Yeah.
from making that huge adjustment, especially in your diet, and how disciplined you were.
Yeah.
So, how does that translate into you helping Tristan, since I know his goal is also to play Division One? So,
Yeah.
does that mean you also do the same thing for Tristan, or in what ways is it different for Tristan?
Look, I think I tried to. My father's no longer with us, but he was very, very aggressive. He was a very rough parent. You know, he grew up with a different parenting style, right? So in the deep south, you just raise kids different. He can't be exposed to the things that his mom and I were exposed to, right? Some of the rough upbringing that we had, some of the environments where it was literally life or death, right? So my grit comes from that. I never want to expose him to that, but what I can expose him to is my mindset. Expose him to, he was late to basketball, right? I tried to put him in as a kid and he wasn't that interested. We were living in Seattle. And when he came to me, I think around about the 7th grade, and said, "Hey, I want to play." You know, I don't lie to my kid. I'm like, "Hey, not that good, right? You don't have a whole lot of time,
Yeah.
right? And so it's going to be 50-50, right?" And so he put his all into the tryouts for the team, didn't make it that year. And I consoled him and I let him know that I was here for him. I'm like, "Look, dude, this is our journey. This is just the start. If you commit to me, you commit to the workout and the pattern, we can make sure this doesn't happen again." And since then, I think he's been all in, like 6-7 days a week, right? And I think in the last year, things have really, really gotten intense for him in that, look, I never want to, I can't hold his hand. I see some of the parents here and they're just like, "Well, I want my child to do this, I want my child to do that."
Mhm.
It's never about your dreams. At some point, he has to wake up and Tristan has to go out and get it. When we moved here, it was important for me not to reach out to the coaches. Had a conversation with Mel, but for the varsity coach and everything, like, you need to reach out to them because I
Mhm.
teach them accountability. Declare what you want, put it out there to the universe, put the steps in place to make it happen. So he diets, we go on vacation, things of that nature. He brings the protein shakes, he brings the supplements. He's really, really turned the corner. And so my philosophy was just to lead by example, but also just let him know, like, look, this is your journey. If you want it, this is something you have to make happen. It doesn't matter who I am or how bad I want it for you, right?
Mhm.
This is something that you have to reach for the stars on your own because my name and what I want, my dreams and desires do not matter to you. With both my kids, Tristan and Layla, I've always been like, look, what do you want to do in life? What do you want to be in life? If it's basketball, great. If it's math and science, great. If it's art, great. But whatever you're going to do, be the best at it, right? And put your whole heart into it, put your effort into it, and put your mindset towards
Yeah,
it. So
be
that's been
intentional.
the biggest thing. Yeah, very intentional.
Be
Very
intentional. Okay. So, was there a moment you realized when Tristan truly loved the game, and when was that moment? Because I know that you're teaching him accountability, and obviously you have to have like a sort of sense to know when to let go.
Yes.
So, do you know when you had that moment of, okay, now I can let go because now he's gonna drive it?
Yeah, there were two pivotal moments. There was one moment we were working with an organization in Texas called Ball Hard. It's run by Sean Hardiman, who is a phenomenal guy, right? Rough around the edges for some folks, right? Because I tell people, if you want your child involved in basketball, stop coddling them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the higher up you go, it's a job, right?
Yeah.
Coaches don't care about your feelings. They don't care about, oh, should I not raise my voice? And so he was training at this facility in Texas. And he was having a hard time adjusting, right? Because a lot of the kids that have been there, they've been playing all their lives, and these were some of the top players in the state of Texas, right?
Mhm.
So he had some catching up to do, right? And he was very uncomfortable, right? And Sean he couldn't hide in that gym, right? If you did the drills, and again, these drills were going at game time speed. That was
Mhm.
Sean's big thing, game speed, game speed. Yeah, I say that to Tristan all the time. When you're working out and when you're doing reps or you're getting 300, 400 shots up, don't do incorrect reps, right? Do it as
Yeah.
if the coach is watching you all the time. And so he was at Ball Hard, and Sean was just on him. And there was a moment in which he kind of messed up, but I didn't feel like he was concentrating. And I got on him, right? I got on him in the gym, and I try not I never want to publicly embarrass my kids, but I was frustrated because I'm like, the effort just isn't there today. And
Mhm.
Sean pulled me aside and said that, hey, look, I know what you want for him. I know that you're a stand-up guy, you're a great dad, but like, you have to take a step back,
Mhm.
step away, right? Turn him over to me. I got it. And that's when I knew, I'm like, okay, look, that's fine. I need to be hands off.
Mhm.
And I think at that moment I knew he was serious about it. He'd gone to improve. And when we found out we were moving to Singapore, he didn't take 2 to 3 weeks to adjust for the jet lag. I think within a day or so, maybe
Couple hours.
a couple hours, he was in the gym.
Mhm.
And I think Mel put him in a game like immediately, right? And that's when I knew. And I told my wife, I'm just like, all right. That's when I thought seriously he's got a shot. I always believed in him, but I always knew that look, if you want your child, this for any parent, you want your child to succeed at anything in the sport, they have to have accountability and intention. And the fact that we got here and he had every reason to rest and just kind of take the time off, he didn't. You know, he texted the coach, he texted VJ at Singapore American School,
Mhm.
he texted Mel, and he carried those relationships, right? That's when I'm like, okay, now this is the start of when the work actually starts. So maybe we can make something out of this.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Now I just want to turn this over to Tristan, right?
For it.
So Tristan, when and how did you know what basketball meant to you? Because obviously it's one thing for a dad to realize when to let go, but you also have to realize for yourself, okay, I want this and I want it to happen for myself. So when do you feel that happened for you?
When I found out what basketball really meant to me was definitely, if I had to pick like a certain like time period, was back when I was back at Ball Hard working with
Mhm.
Sean Hardman. You know, basketball has been, especially recently, it's not just been like a hobby for me, like just, you know, playing on Sundays, Saturdays, just stuff like that. It's also been something that's it's molded my personality, you know, how I address people, like just the way I talk, the way I do pretty much anything in my life. Um, yeah, like the culture that I was in at Ball Hard, where I was talking to different like trainers that I worked with, like NBA players, pro players, like college coaches. Even though at the time I was too young to be like to worry about being like recruited necessarily. Um, it taught me like so many different things of how to build my brand as a person and how to just how to approach like new people, how to meet new people. It taught me I think it gave me a lot of grit, like just like learning how to like push through things. I went through like a lot of like really hard times, like physically, but also mentally, like just dealing with rejection, injuries. I used to be very injury prone. Like I really messed up knees to where like to the point where sometimes I could only train like once a day, and then like I could barely even like walk straight. But I think basketball just helped me find kind of like that fire that like I approach a lot of things in my life with now. I think it just overall like just hardened me as a person and just taught me a lot about who I am.
Yeah. So talk me through your experience of moving to Singapore, because you moved from Texas, that's right?
Yeah.
Yes, you moved from Texas to Singapore. And obviously basketball is completely different in Texas and Singapore. And we know that for very good measure, right?
Yeah.
So when you first got here and you played for Melly, you played a few games, talk me through what your mindset was like then. Because obviously you must have definitely felt like, okay, it's much easier. It's not as intense. It's not as hard as it used to be back home. So what was that experience like?
Yeah, so I definitely did immediately notice, a crazy amount of differences, whether it's just the culture about basketball, and just like obviously the level of competition. But, which while in a way that helped my performance in games or whatever, just because I'm going against like shorter, less athletic people, it also I also kind of hit like a little bit of a speed bump at the start, just because coming from the U.S. I was always used to being I was very unathletic in the U.S. I didn't start dunking until I got to Singapore. I was still, again, like my dad said, like I started basketball late, so I was still kind of in that awkward like catching up phase.
Yeah.
So as I started to get better, I was trying to fit myself more into like a role player type of role, where I'd play defense and I'd sit in the corner, I'd check up threes. But when I came to Singapore, everybody sees this like 6'2" black kid from probably only black kid at his school, maybe like 8 in the in the league, but yeah, so everybody expected me to be like some type of superstar, like dunking on people, doing whatever. But in my mind, I just had all that muscle memories. Okay, I'm gonna give you the ball. I'm gonna go sit in the corner and watch you bring it up, and just hope you pitch it to me. But yeah, so at first like I struggled. Like when Mel threw me in, he's like, all right, like go cook up, like go ISO with somebody. I was like, ISO, like what are you talking about? And I had a very I had a pretty rough first couple of games. I scored a decent amount. Like I think I had like 20 something points in a couple of the games, but it was very ugly. It was very ugly games, just because I wasn't used to being in that position. But now I think like over time it's I think it'll definitely benefit me like when I go back to the U.S. to play, because now I know what it's like to be like a leader on a team, to be a leading scorer, and just to be somebody that like people have to rely on. Like it's easy to like fall into the background and like just sit on the bench when like the big moments happen in the game, or just like maybe not be like an integral part of the offense. Like, but it's definitely taught me a lot of good like leading skills, and just taught me how to handle a different kind of pressure that I didn't have the opportunity to learn while I was in the U.S. Just still being new to basketball.
So obviously when you came to Singapore, you had to figure out your new role in the team, right? And then in the summer you did go back to the U.S. with OCD for their summer camp, right? So how did this new feeling, or this new insight of, I'm actually an integral part of this team. I am one of the main guys. I am now the superstar of this team. Taking that mindset back to the U.S., how did that impact your performance and the way you played in some of those tournaments?
Yeah, so definitely my coming back to the U.S. It was a crazy difference from when I lived there before, especially considering the team that we went to the U.S. with. It was for the most part pretty young. There was like maybe two other players on the team that were my age, so that even more, that kind of forced me to be in kind of like a leadership role. And at first it was a big adjustment. It was kind of whoa, what the fuck is going on right now? Like, cause
Yeah.
I went from, like a bunch of like weak presses, like unathletic dudes playing in Singapore. I'm a foot taller than everybody, and now, I gotta guard like some 6'8" Australian dude, like
Yeah.
something I haven't seen like forever, right? But I definitely think I definitely think after like I got that first like those jitters out, like being back in that type of environment, I think I definitely thrived like on the U.S. trip. Just it felt more natural to me than I would have expected to step to that leadership role. And it felt really good, to be honest. Like, just we didn't win a lot of games just because, like I said, they was such a young team, and like I was probably the tallest dude on my team, bringing the ball up, like not playing big man. But yeah, it was a really good feeling to just know that I can still like thrive in that type of role, even when I'm not in like the kind of the lower level of basketball in Singapore.
All right. Thanks a lot for the insights, Mr. Richardson. I just have one more question for you.
Sure.
What do you hope for Tristan in the future? Like, what are your hopes and some of like your aspirations that he continues to do, and what do you think that he should start to do that he doesn't already?
Yeah, I think I want to see him. Look, us coming out here was very intentional, right? We knew that. Look, I tell people you don't get more time, right? If there's a kid, I think Kobe Bryant made a statement about the amount of work you put in. If you start at the age of 5, people really don't catch up to you, right? Because we all have the same amount of time, right? So the best you can do is just change the paradigm. I knew that the basketball scene wasn't as intense out here, it wasn't as competitive, but I knew that he had that leadership potential in him, right? Sometimes he needs to be in a different environment to realize that sort of value. So what I'd like to see from him is just, there are games. There's been really good games he's had out here, whether he's dunking in the game or he's taking it over and it's a fourth quarter comeback. He can shoot. He can play. Like, he can do it in the next. I truly believe that. I mean, I believe in him. I want him to believe in himself. Whether that's facing kids in Thailand or facing kids in Malaysia, or whether it's going back to the U.S. at the NBA combine or whatever they went to where you play that tournament, right? Believe in yourself, right? If my dad taught me this, right? If you're going to be good at something and you're going to stick your chest out and have that sort of swagger, be the baddest man in the room no matter where you are. And there was a point in my time playing basketball where I was training so hard, and people were like, what are you training so hard for? Like, you're not going to go pro, you're not going to do this. I'm like, I don't care, I don't do anything half-assed. I don't. I do everything with 1,000% effort. And in my mind, you can't tell me I'm not the best speaker in the world. In tech, I think I'm the best AI guy in the world. When I get on stage at these different conferences, I think that I'm the best go-to-market evangelist in the world. If I'm on the basketball court, I can't play now, right? But if I'm doing anything, whether we're playing video games, I'm the best. I want him to have that mindset, right? And when he does, and you've seen it as his teammate, when he makes up his mind that he's that person, possibilities are endless, right? We don't know how far basketball is going to go. If it takes him to college, if he goes pro, that is fine, right? But I want him to have that intent, because you can truly manifest who you are. There's pictures of proof that I was a small, skinny, nerdy kid, and people wouldn't believe that I was athletic, right? Or built myself to be athletic. So with the power of mindset, intentionality, you can manifest your reality. So my biggest dream for both my kids, Tristan and Layla, is to figure out what you want to do it 100%, and manifest it. Believe in yourself, but also put the damn work in. So many parents say, "Oh, well, believe in yourself. My kid he wants to play college ball." No. There has to be accountability and balance, right? It's not enough just to believe. You manifest it, right? It's habits. The habits you do every day, the mindset, the work, the repetition. Those things together are a powerful combination. So I want him to keep his hand on the needle, right? And just push himself, believe in himself, and manifest it. That's what I want for him. And if he does that, there's no limit to what he can accomplish. It'll go farther than I ever imagined. So
Yeah. I mean, of course, I can't disagree with you there. I've seen that personally as his teammate as well on OTD and varsity. There's been a couple of moments. I think we have a running back going on as well, where he's like been so intentional, and he's trying to help me also be more accountable and more intentional with the way I play basketball. Like before you guys moved to Singapore, I was on the OTD U16 D3 team. So I was still quite bad, and I used to go to like the extra trainings maybe once a month, once in 2 months, and I used to be like, you know what, it's fine. Like if anything, that's gonna work, right? Because like I'm so bad that even if I put in this much effort, I'm gonna get somewhat better.
Yeah.
But when you guys moved, and that first winter, when I met Tristan, and then he came to the JVI trials, and then I met him when he came to OTD, and we went to all those morning trainings, I kind of realized that Tristan, can be an intense person, but he holds everybody accountable, and he's also a very responsible person.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've seen that for myself, and that's helped me grow as a person as well, and also definitely as a basketball player. It's helped me a lot in my journey to make varsity as well. Obviously, on varsity, there's a lot of great players, and I still don't match up to a lot of them. But obviously, with this new mindset and with like the change in myself that started with the catalyst of Tristan helping me,
Yeah.
I feel like I can also make a lot of things happen. So I really agree with you on the power of belief, and also more so on actually putting in the work, because I do see a lot of people who like to hold themselves up to high standards, but then they fail when it comes to actually putting the work in. So I do see that a lot. So I think that's a great insight. So thank you very much for that.
Of course.
And actually, I just have a question for both of you, so you can just take a turn at answering this. Have you guys ever had any like disagreements when it comes to basketball? Because I know for sure that there have been. So I would just like to, get like a little sneak peek into that sort of area.
You want to go first? I know what I'm going to say.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah, I think Tristan has an ability sometimes when you're on the court and you're in the moment. My wife's favorite phrase is feedback is a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important, right? Hold yourself accountable, but sometimes if you want to get to a certain point, you can't do it alone,
Mm-hmm.
right? Being coachable is a huge, huge thing, right? And I tell kids, right, if you want to play at any level, being coachable, everyone is so focused on being a scorer, and everyone wants to be a star. The schools already have that. Be that kid that is coachable, be that person that's a vibe person, right? You're pulling the team together, you're giving 110%, but also be self-aware. So there'll be moments where, and I remember, I go to all these games and I watch everything, right? I can tell you about any possession. I'm like, hey, you think maybe you could have made an attempt at a rebound in this particular possession, or this possession where maybe he passed it and kind of passed up the shot? To where I'm just like, no, and it's not about being selfish as a player. I'm like, but sometimes, the team needs you to score. And he would just sometimes disagree with something I said. Well, no, I saw it. This is when it happened.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we got into some a little bit of a, I'm not going to say argument, but he feels that it went a certain way. I'm like, well, no, I was watching you, and you didn't do that, right? And it was this particular possession, right? And so, and what what he's worked on, what he's improved on, when he first started out, maybe a year or two in, I think he was kind of defensive because he had a chip on his shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
right? And sometimes as a coach, you're going to have coaches that are going to tell you something you don't agree with.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes maybe the coach draws up a play and maybe the coach sees the way you didn't. Sometimes it's okay to learn when to kind of shut up. There's a time to voice your opinion,
Mm-hmm.
and I tell people there's a time to be like, okay, yeah, coach, how can I improve? Right? If I got a kid that comes to me and I give them constructive feedback and they argue with me, it's different, right? But reframing it and saying that, okay, maybe I didn't see it that way, but tell me a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this works outside of basketball, right? Instead of being so quick to be defensive, where I've seen him grow is that I'll say something after the game, he'll have dialogue about it, he'll have an opinion about it. Whereas as he was learning to kind of be a responsible player, I think his first instinct was that, well, he's mad at me, I'm defending myself. I'm like, no, I'm not attacking you, but I'm just giving you feedback, right? And this is even when he had good games, because I think you can always improve.
Mm-hmm.
No really good player that's worth their salt is going to say, look, I want my coach or my advisor, let's take tennis for example.
Yeah.
If Federer's out there and he's winning and he's up in the sets, he doesn't want his coach to be like, after he's like, oh no, you did everything perfect, Roger, you won, that's all that matters. No, you want real-time feedback, right? That's how you know someone has your true intention, your best interest at heart, right? Just so being coachable, taking feedback and acting on feedback is something that I think there was some tension, a few years ago, right? But as he's developed as a player, his maturity's developed to where he can take constructive feedback instead of being defensive. He asks more questions now. He's open to it. So, yeah.
Okay. Tristan?
Yeah, so kind of going back a little bit to what he said about, me getting very defensive, right? Just about like anytime like he called me out and stuff. When around in middle school, like around the 8th grade, when I told my dad I wanted to start playing basketball, I think he started taking it serious like way before I did, like in like true like 100%. The second I told him I wanted to start playing, like he immediately went out and bought all the different like protein supplements, stuff like that. And he helped me make a plan. Like we had a whiteboard and everything, like in the house, like where I take like 3 times a day protein shake, amino acids, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And honestly, I just was not on top of it at all. Like the first couple months probably that we started doing that, I was just not taking this stuff. Like he'd call me out on it because he'd be like, okay, Tristan, like, when's the last time I haven't seen you take a protein shake in a minute? Like, what are you doing? I feel like you're not taking this seriously. And I get all offensive, like, all defensive, talking about like, oh no, what are you talking about? Like, I've been doing that. Like, I'm locked in this, I'm locked in that. I think before I fell in love with the actual work and like, just being like meticulous about everything I do, I fell in love with the idea of being like that dog and like, putting in like real work, being able to tell people, oh yeah, like I deserve this shit. Like I put in work, I put in more hours than you, this and that. I fell in with like the idea of like, feeling that way before actually like committing to it, right? Like I would literally, I don't know if my dad knows, I used to, the first like 2 weeks that I started taking protein shakes, sometimes, I mean, because they're nasty. Sometimes I would dump them down the sink. I'd blend it up. I would blend it up and I would dump it down the sink. But yeah, and he'd call me out and we get these like big arguments where he'd just be saying this and that. I'd be like, no, like I do that, and like I'd get genuinely offended because like it's like it doesn't it hurt my ego like to have somebody tell me that like I'm not taking it seriously. But then there was definitely, I think right before we came to Singapore, like I got better over time, but I think like the real like lock-in moment was probably about a month before we got to Singapore, where I think I really just decided like, like this is like, I'm gonna start taking this shit serious. Like this is something I need to do, something I want to do. So that's when a lot of things changed. That's when I started taking the protein shakes on my own. He didn't have to like hound me or whatever. I started taking all my other stuff. I started doing my own research, finding new things I could start taking, like to help my recovery process. New drills and stuff to help me get faster, jump higher. Work on my skills, and then even like the feedback stuff he was talking about, like in terms of taking like feedback. I learned how to like take feedback and actually use it, like use it to my advantage, like look at like the people like nagging me and training stuff instead of looking at it as like a annoying big brother, like a teacher or something, using it as like a real resource and like using it to better myself. I think that was a big difference. So that was one argument we used to have a lot of the time, but like looking back on it now, I think I'm glad that I had my dad to kind of lock me in like that.
Yeah, for sure. So it kind of like held you accountable, right, for your own actions.
Yeah.
So I could go on and on with you guys, but unfortunately I think that's all the time we have for today. I just want to thank the both of you for coming out and letting me talk to you about these various experiences that you guys had growing up and also moving to Singapore, which is a really big change from Texas.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank you guys for coming out here and doing like this podcast with me. And I just want to look to like viewers once. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Beyond the Court. I really hope that you've enjoyed this episode, and I really hope that you've taken away and can take away some more of the insights on what it takes to be such a high-level player and what it takes to train and how intentional you have to be with everything you do. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.